This morning, when we asked the question, if you're saying we need to let our light shine before men, I mean, they may see our good works, or we want to talk about how you are the light of the world, how exactly is it that your light is shining? So we have a screen up there, have three images upon there, talking first being that of the lighthouse. And we imagine the lighthouse, and it's sitting up on those rocky shores, and it's casting that light out into the darkness of the sea. And the goal of this lighthouse is to be able to warn those ships when they come close to danger. Now, that is the job, and their light shines bright, right? And the brighter the light, the farther away the ship can see. And it says, all right, I see the danger coming, and I turn and I avoid that danger. But it might be that we are here this morning, you say, well, the flashlight kind of represents me. Understanding the flashlight doing the same thing, that it is able to go and shine out into the darkness. But the difference between the lighthouse and the flashlight is where the lighthouse stays rigid and firm in one position. The flashlight is able to be mobile. It's able to go out, it's able to go into different places, and it's able to shine light in a lot of different areas. And the last image that we have up there to the far right is that of a light switch. And it might be that you are here this morning and you say, well, my light shines well, but as long as I turn the light on. Sometimes I find myself turning it on for sometimes and turning it off for others. So this morning, let's begin and ask that question, which represents you this morning? Which image would represent you? So let's first look at that of a lighthouse. Now let's examine this. When we are at church, no doubt the lighthouse may be representing a church building, right? The church in the community. We say, yes, I'm strong in the faith when I'm in church, right? When I talk about when Christ is saying, let your light shine and you are the light of the world. As the church, it really represents, it's represented very well. I'm very strong within the church. And I'm ready to preach the truth. No doubt there are times that we get together, and what a great day it is out there today. What a beautiful day that we have to enjoy, and what a great privilege it is to be able to come together as family and to be able to worship God together. And we think, yes, I love being a Christian on Sunday morning. I love being able to get up and to be able to come around people of like faith, and I just love that so much, and I feel so strong, right? Sometimes we find ourselves in the world. We know that we are in the world, but we are not of the world. So we say, I'm out in the darkness and the sin and the evil that's going on in the world, and I just love being able to come to church because my mind is focused back on heaven. It's focused back on God, and I have good people around me, and we say, yes, here is where my light really shines. And it might be that we're even in here and we say, yes, we're going to be that church. We're going to preach the word, 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 2. We say, preach the word, be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. And we say, that's exactly what I want to do when I'm in church, right? I'm going to stand for the Bible. When I'm in class, when I'm talking about these discussions, I'm ready to stand on what the Word of God says, and my light's shining very bright when those instances happen. In fact, even in Acts chapter 20 and verse 47, I find myself saying, I'm going to preach the whole counsel of God, right? If you want to hear the truth, you come out to the Murray City Church of Christ. That's where you're going to hear the truth, right? Because our light is shining bright. Now, hopefully, as individuals, we find ourselves wanting to behave ourselves. One slide too much. We want to behave ourselves so that the community knows that we stand on the Bible. What a great example that would be for us to be able to say, yes, as a congregation in the Lord's church and in Murray City, Tennessee, we say, I want our light to shine and represent God. We want to represent Jesus. Go with me to Revelation chapter 3 and verse 8. What a great picture is depicted here of the church at Philadelphia in Revelation chapter 3 and verse 8. Now, when we read the Revelation, it's written to the 7 churches of Asia. Christ says, I've been in amongst you. I've been in your buildings. I've been in your assemblies. I know what you're doing. Listen in verse 8 of what it is said about the church at Philadelphia. I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hath not denied my name. Friends, that's a beautiful image for a church. And I think about that oftentimes of our church here in Murray City. We think, well, we're not the biggest church that's probably in the community or maybe even in the state of Tennessee. And we're not by far the smallest. But we say, yes, we're doing good work, right? We want our light to shine brightly. We want it to be said about us that God has opened a door for us, right? We're trying to do the work of the Lord. He says, I've opened a door and no man can shut it. He says that not only that, he says, thou hast a little strength. So notice, you might be a little small, you have a little strength, and thou hast kept my word. What a great thing to be said about a church this morning. If Christ were to be here today and he were to talk about our church, wouldn't it be wonderful if he says, thou hast kept my word, right? I want to be a part of the church that stands for the Bible. Thou hast not denied my name. I said, all right. You want to hear a sermon from the Bible? If you want to go and hear the Bible taught in Bible class, go out to the Murray City Church of Christ. Those individuals are out there taking the Word of God and they're using it as the authority of God. We said that what a great example that would be for us. I want to be a part of that church. Now when we notice that, we say, all right, I come to the Murray City Church of Christ. You're talking about that. I want to be your light is shining bright in the Lighthouse. I'm out in the community and I see the danger that's coming and I see that light and I say, all right, I'm coming to church with you. Again, appreciate Brad mentioning that. We have our fellowship, fall fellowship Friday night. Please invite your friends and neighbors, anybody that you can think about. And then not the following Sunday, but the one after that, we'll have our Friends and Family Day, hoping that we can get some people coming from even the fall fellowship to the Friends and Family Day on Sunday morning. It's a good outreach, right? We can get out and get in the community and get people to come to church. Why? Because what we do here is what God has commanded us to do. Matthew chapter 28 and verse 20. Teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I've commanded you. And lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the earth. So we say, all right, I'm following the commands of God here at the church. Our light is shining bright because we stand for the truth. Now, not only that, we do benevolent work. And again, as Brad had mentioned in the announcements, the amount of money, right? We were putting food in here in the pantry this morning for the food truck coming. We say, I want to do good benevolent work, right? We want to let our light shine in the community as one that is beneficial, right? To give benevolence to individuals in the community. Galatians chapter 6 and verse 10, right? Do good to all men, especially those of the household of faith. So we say, all right. The Church of Christ at Murray City, right? I want to stand for the truth. I want to stand up and say, I know we talked about it in class. It's almost like you want to say, that's the church that thinks they're the only ones going to heaven. They're out there preaching the truth. They're preaching the Bible. Why do I want to be a part of that? We say, we've got to be a lighthouse. We've got to be a beacon in our community. We do that through teaching the Word. We do that through benevolence, right? Doing the good work, helping out individuals, helping out other congregations throughout the area. Not only that, we do mission work. Matthew chapter 28 and verse 19, where he's talking about going out into all the world and preaching and baptizing those, making disciples. We say, all right, I want to do my part. And again, the amount of mission work that we are able to do, we say, well, I can't go to India, I can't go to Africa to preach the gospel, but as a congregation, right, that lighthouse, by contributing, by giving of our means to the Lord's church here at Murray City, we say that light beam stretches all the way over into India. It stretches all the way over into Africa. We are able to do that work. So see, the lighthouse of this church, we say it stretches farther and farther than we could do even here at home. What a great thing to be said about a congregation. I want to be a member of that strong lighthouse. And what it is when I am in church, that my light, right? I'm letting my light shine. I'm the light of the world, and it's almost projected out even farther from the lighthouse, from church services. I'm here. I'm strong. I'm contributing. I'm trying to help out. I'm participating in activities, and my light's just shining out as far as it can reach. But friends, if we're not careful, what we find is that our light stops at the church. We know that we are supposed to be letting our light shine before men. We understand that we are the light of the world, and we say, all right, I'm going to be that way. But it's only within the church walls. What I find is that my light shines bright as long as I am at church. Now, Ecclesiastes chapter 4, looking there in verse 12, Solomon talks about how that a threefold cord is not easily broken. So the idea being there is that I want to stay close together with other individuals. And I want to make sure that that bond that I have as a family is strong. That's why like Friday night is such a great thing. Because we can look at that and we're around other Christians. And that's strengthening us, right? We're saying, all right, I want to be around those people. I'm encouraged by them. I'm trying to do better. Essentially, we know, right, that we say, all right, if I'm around bad individuals, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, 33, evil communications corrupt good manners. If I'm around bad people, I don't behave as good a Christian as I should. So why more should we not be a part of the stuff that's going on at the church services? So I say, all right, while I'm doing that, but then I'm strong, I'm faithful, but then I go out into the world and I'm not as strong as I am when I'm around other Christians. We might find ourselves being like this and say, oh yes, I'm ready to give an answer, right? In the Bible classes on Wednesday nights, 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 15, sanctify the Lord in your hearts and be ready always to give an answer to anyone that asketh you of the hope that lies within you with meekness and fear. I say, I want to make sure you ask me a Bible question, I'm going to give you a Bible answer. But it's typically only when we're in church services. It might be that we get outside of that and we say, well, I'm not as strong, right? I'm not ready to answer questions that someone might have in the community. They may ask me a question that I don't know, so I don't even talk about the Bible. We find many people being in that situation. Many people in the Lord's church saying, I can't go and study with someone. What if they ask me a question that I don't know? I won't be ready for it. I won't go evangelize to anyone, but I'll sit in class and on Wednesday night, Sunday morning, and I may ask a question if I don't feel like I'm going to be laughed at, and I'll go like that. But what we find are individuals saying, it's just within the church. So what we have here, friends, if I asked you this morning again, how is your light represented? You may be here this morning or listening online and say, well, my light's really represented best as a lighthouse. It shines bright, and I do my part to reach out into the lost and dying world, but that's about where it stays, right there. I don't really go any farther than the church. I don't go any farther than the lighthouse. Now, what about our second point here? The flashlight. Got it there in the screen. Is your light like a flashlight? As we talked about there in Matthew chapter 5, he's telling us that we are to let our light shine before men that they may see our good works. So here we are, the flashlight. It's mobile. It's able to get out. It's able to do these things. And what we find is in Mark chapter 16 and verse 15, the Great Commission still applies to us today. Mark chapter 16 and verse 15. And he said unto them, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Now, if we're here today, we understand that command is to preach the gospel to every creature. The way I preach the gospel to every creature is to go. So I'll say, all right, I've got to do this job. I am the light of the world. The world is a dark place, and I have to be able to go out and spread the gospel. But how am I going to do that? We understand that everybody's not in our assembly this morning, are they? They're not even all in here from the community of Murray City. And we say, how, right? If my light is just limited to a lighthouse, how is it that the individuals that I know, my friends, my neighbors, my work, and the people that work with me, I say, how are they going to know the gospel? He's telling us the Great Commission, you go and preach the gospel to every creature. So I say, all right, I've got to get outside of the church. I've got to let my light shine before men. Again, that idea there in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 16, let your light so shine before men. That word before means in front of men. When I leave this assembly, I must go out and I must make sure that my light is shining before, in front of the individuals that I meet from day to day. Friends, if we want to invite people to come to church, we have to understand we have to go out and we have to talk about those things. How sad it would be to have someone come and say, I didn't realize that you were a member of the Lord's church. I didn't realize you were a member of the Church of Christ. I've worked with you for 10, 15, 20 years, and I never knew you came out here to church. Friends, that should not be the way it is. We should, again, we don't have to be on the street corner and preaching and talking about all that stuff. And it's not that we can't talk about anything else, but by our actions and by our examples, and when we have the opportunity to talk to those individuals, we need to be making sure that we are demonstrating that. Philippians chapter 2. Looking there what Paul is discussing there to the church at Philippi. Philippians chapter 2. Notice what he's writing to them in verse 15. That ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God without rebuke. Look, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world. How beautiful that is, right? As Christians, we have to go out into the world, and notice as well in verse 16, holding forth the word of life, that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain, neither labored in vain. Friends, we don't have to beat religion into every conversation, but it should be that the people that you're closest with, your co-workers, your family members, should know what you believe in the Bible. They should know that you are a member of the Lord's church. They should know that you are out there trying to say, all right, I'm letting my light shine, right? And the darker the world is, the brighter the light. We say, all right, my work, the place I work at, Ben, you don't realize the individuals that I work with, but you can be that bright light shining. Again, now the Lighthouse might be able to reach them, right? The church may be able to reach them through the social media platforms that we have. But how bright that light could be if you take that flashlight and you go into your work tomorrow and say, all right, I'm going to make sure they know that I'm a member of the Church of Christ. We have to go out in that, right? In the midst of a crooked and perverse nation. That's right where we're at, right? The world is evil. Now, not only that, 1 Peter chapter 3, looking there in verse 2. Notice the difference, all right? We can make a difference in the world. 1 Peter chapter 2, looking there in verse 9. He says, but ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, and that ye should show forth the praises of men who hath called you out of darkness unto his marvelous light. Friends, too many times we want to be like the world, right? We want to be Christians, and we want to say, yes, my light shines bright. It's in that lighthouse, and you ask me to do something, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be strong in the faith when I'm at church, and I'm going to try to do my best. And the more that we get together, right, the brighter that light's going to be. And then I get out in the community, and I say, but I want to be like the world. Right? I don't really want people to know that I'm a Christian. I don't want to act like that. Again, the statement made that we are a peculiar people. And you say, well, you are kind of peculiar, right? Because you don't do these things. You don't participate in these things. You're peculiar. But we're different from the world. And friends, that should be the way we are. If people don't notice that about us, we may be living a little bit too much like the world and not enough like Christ. Now notice, it is our job to carry the good news to everyone. We've talked about this before. The argument for God, I don't see why a loving God would send someone to an eternal hell. God's not going to send you there. You simply choose to go. You're on your way there, and we find is that we have the ability to be relieved of that. We say, all right, I want the remission of my sin. I want to be able to have forgiveness of that. What I want is the gospel, the good news. I'm lost. How do I become found? How is it that I can enter into heaven? Romans chapter 10, looking there in verse 14. Notice, I've got neighbors. I've got loved ones. They don't know the truth. They're lost. How am I going to reach them? Romans chapter 10 and verse 14. How shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach except they be sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things. Friends, I say, well, that says preacher, Ben. That's your job, right? You're the one supposed to be door knocking around the community. You're supposed to be getting out. No, friends, it's all of our jobs. It's the congregation's job. We're supposed to go out. We are supposed to help those individuals. Right? Again, we know them people. We know people that are lost and dying in this world. And we think, well, I'm not going to say anything to them. And I know it sounds maybe a little blunt, but there's a gospel preacher that made the comment. He said, I don't know how I can stand to be in heaven knowing that my neighbors or my loved ones are lost in hell. He's like, I just don't know how I can bear it in heaven. And the old preacher tells him, he said, you know they're lost now and it doesn't seem to bother you that bad. He said, I doubt it'll bother you in heaven. And that seems hard. But friends, that's the truth, right? We question those things. We say, how can I enjoy the benefit, the beauty of heaven, knowing my family member's lost? But you know they're lost here. And sometimes we don't do anything about it. So we must ask that. Who's going to go out and do that, right? Who is going to go out and teach them the truth? Friends, it must be us. How are they going to know the truth unless we teach them? We say, well, we've got the church, right? The lighthouse of the church is shining out. That may reach some people. But friends, if we have a flashlight and we go out into the world, friends, we can reach more people like that. There's a song, and I think it's 40-something in our book. It's "You Never Mentioned Him to Me." You may be familiar with that hymn. What a sad song that is. It's a very difficult song for me to sing, not because I can't sing, but it's because of the words that are in there. It talks about how on that day of judgment that we will see individuals, and the chorus in that says, you knew I was astray, you saw me every day, you knew I was astray, but you never mentioned him to me. Friends, think about that. We get to heaven, we think, wow, we're at the relief. I've made it to heaven, right? I've worked my whole life trying to make sure that I'm doing what God commands me to do. I've made it to heaven, but here's our neighbor. They're eternally lost. They're doomed. And we think, I knew they didn't have the gospel. I had never carried them the gospel. I knew they were lost. He says, but you knew this whole time? You knew the whole time that you lived beside me all those years. You knew what it would take to save my soul from hell. And you never mentioned him to me? Friends, that's a sad, sad thought. To think about the idea that we know there are individuals, but yet I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want to be embarrassed. I'm not a preacher. I can't talk to these individuals. Friends, we must let our light shine in the community, and we must go out and meet those people and say, look, just come to services, right? That's all it takes. Again, we've got the avenue set up. Come to the fall festival, right? All we're going to do, we're going to eat soups and salads. We're going to enjoy fellowship. And then while they're here, hey, you enjoyed that so much? We got Friends and Family Day. You're not going to be the only person that'll be a stranger there on Sunday. Come out and listen, right? Come out and be a part of the church. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as taking that Facebook post and sharing it, liking it, right? I don't know the algorithm, especially on Facebook, but I think if you share it, like it, your friends, your family, they see those things. And we say it's as simple as that. Friends, we must be busy doing about the Lord's work because we have friends and family members that are lost. Now, the last point here. Am I a lighthouse, right? Does my light shine from a lighthouse that it's just within the church? Is my light a flashlight? I carry it everywhere I want to go, everywhere that I'm at, right? Every place is an opportunity for me to shine the light. Or is it that you are here this morning and we say, well, my light, that kind of operates off a light switch. It's on sometimes and it's off sometimes. Notice Matthew chapter 5, looking there in verse 16. That we are to be out busy doing that. We made reference to this. That is to shine before men. That we are to be out and showing this light. But it might be that we're here and we say, well, I'm at church and I like being at church, but then I just flip the light off when I go home. Turn with me to Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10. Many preachers show this chapter and verse, especially there in verse 25, about not being here in church on Sunday morning like we should be. But notice there's more to it than just saying, be in the pew, right? There's more than that. Look there in verse 23. He says, let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. And let us consider one another, now notice this in verse 24, to provoke unto love and to do good works. Stir up is what that provoke word means. When we're together, it says, all right, when we're together, we're going to stir each other up for good works. We made that point at the beginning, right? It's easy to be a Christian. It's easy to behave that way when we are around other Christians. And again, in verse 25, that's the importance of not forsaking the assembly. And we're encouraging each other as we see Judgment Day approaching. That's the whole basis, is we're growing, we're strengthening ourselves. But some individuals say, I don't care, I'm going to come to church on Sunday morning, you'll get me there, just like I'm commanded to be, but then the light switch is turned off. Monday morning, don't ask anything else of me, right? You got a thing going on Friday night, I'm not coming. I'm going to show up like I'm supposed to, and you're not going to get anything else out of me. What we find is it's easy to turn off our light. But it's easy to turn it back on, maybe when it's convenient. When you go to Acts chapter 8, looking there in verses 9 through 13, it's the account of Simon the sorcerer. He has seen he has been kind of misleading the individuals there in that area, in Samaria, and what we find is that he sees the Philip coming down and the miracles that are done, and he believes, right? He obeys the gospel. Then when the apostles come down and lay hands on people, the gift of the Holy Spirit is given to those individuals by the laying on of hands of apostles. He says, give me that, right? I'll pay you good money for me to be able to work the miracles like the Holy Spirit offers, because what I find is, he said, I can really make some money like that. Now, what does that mean to me? What's the application for us today? It might be that we're here and we say, well, when I meet an individual and I need a job, or maybe I need a benefit from something, I say, hey, I'm a member of the church down in Murray City, and so-and-so worships down there too. Oh, really? Well, see, that's the benefit. We say, well, I'm this individual, and I'm going to try to use my Christianity as a leg up to do something. I'm going to try to use that as a benefit for me, but really I don't mean anything by it. And I simply turn it on when I need to be a Christian and turn it back off when it's inconvenient. So what we find is, right, let it work with my schedule. I don't want to be a Christian all the time, right? When it's convenient, I'll flip that light on. Noticing in Luke chapter 14 and verse 18, especially verse 18, but when Luke writes this about the individuals, the great feast is prepared, and he goes out and he bids them all to come to the feast. And what we find, I love this verse, and they all with one consent began to make excuse. That's what we find, right? I'm a Christian when it's benefiting me. I'm a Christian when it's convenient for me. But when something's asked of me to do something, the light switch turns off. When it's asked of me to go above and beyond, the light switch is turned off. I say, no, let me begin to make some excuses, right? I can't do it. I've got a job. I've got this going on. I'm too busy. We've all heard those excuses. But what we find is that many individuals like to turn the light on when difficult times come, right? When something terrible happens in my life, now what do I say? Flip that light on. Oh, Lord, answer my prayer, right? Get me out of this position that I'm in. I know I haven't been very faithful, but if you'll help me through this, right, I'll be better. I'll be a better Christian. I'll get back into church. Just help me through this. And what happens is we get through it, and then the light goes back off. We say, well, got what I needed. Go back to living the life that I need to. James chapter 1 verses 2 through 4 explains to us that through these difficulties is what strengthens our faith. That through the challenging times, it's not about I'm in trouble, turn the light switch on. I'm out of trouble, turn the light switch off. It's through the difficult times my faith becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. Now what we find, friends, is it's convenient. Too many people we find around the world today that it's convenient to just turn the light switch off. John chapter 3, looking there 19 through 21, when Jesus is speaking there, talking about how that light has come into the world, and this is the condemnation, that light has come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. We say, but I want to enjoy these things in life, but I really want the benefit of Christ, right? When bad things happen, I want reassurance of what I'm doing. I want reassurance of being able to go to heaven if I were to die in an accident. But I also want to be a part of the world. I also want to be doing these things that I enjoy. And Christ says, here's the condemnation, right? That they love the darkness because they don't like to be reproved, right? We talked about that there in verse 21. They don't want their deeds to be manifest. That's why that's why the auditorium is not filled up this morning. That's why we have chairs lined up, because people don't like their deeds to be shown for what they are. They love the darkness. They say, I don't want to be a part of that, right? But we find so many, when trouble comes though, right, and I'm ready to give all that stuff up, turn the light switch back on. Now what we find, 1 John chapter 2, noticing there 14 through 16, a very familiar passage to many of us, understanding there, that for I have written unto you, fathers, because, no, I'm running the wrong spot. 1 John, where am I at? All right, 15, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. I went up one verse too many. If we love the world, the love of the Father is not in us. What we find is what we're looking for in verse 16. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And what we find are individuals saying, turn that light off because I'm focused on the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. I'm focused on those things. And then when it's convenient for me, I'll turn the light switch back on. But I want to turn it back off so I can enjoy these things. And friends, we find here in closing, notice this, Matthew chapter 10, there in verse 32, we find individuals, we say, I want my light to be bright like the lighthouse, but I don't want to have a flashlight. I don't want people to know that I'm a Christian, right? I behave myself in such a way that I don't want people to think to know that I go to church. But what we find in Matthew chapter 10, 32, whosoever therefore shall confess me before men, he will I confess also before my Father which is in heaven. But whosoever shall deny me before men, him will I also deny before my Father which is in heaven. Friends, let us not be ashamed of the gospel. Romans chapter 1, verse 16. What we have to understand is, I want to be a shining light. Now, is it good to let my light shine so bright in the church that our light beam goes way out into the world? Absolutely. What we find is when we have strong Christians in the church, standing for the truth, standing and doing what God commands to do, our light does shine very bright in our community. Again, the benevolent work and the mission work goes out to beyond the limits of this community. And what we find is we need Christians that have that flashlight in their hand as well. And they say, all right, I've got friends and neighbors that are lost. I've got to help them. So we carry that light off into the world. What we don't need are Christians who just turn that light switch on and off when it's convenient. When it gets tough, we need it, right? When it goes good, turn it off. We don't need people like that. But it might be that you're here this morning and they say, well, I don't have to worry about what kind of light represents me because I'm not a Christian. We must understand, friends, that why leave today while you have the time and opportunity? Again, we will face the judgment just as sure as I'm standing here before you. Why would you wait? We need to hear, believe, repent, confess, and be baptized, right? And then when we obey the gospel, we've put that old man to death. We've raised up a new creature, and we say, I want to tell everybody about how I was lost in sin, and now I am ready to go into heaven, and I have that opportunity, and we carry that to all the people that we meet. And it might be that we're here, and we say, well, I guess I do behave kind of like a light switch, and I turn my light on and off. I got to repent of those things. I got to turn back to God. We understand if we're having through difficulty, we say, I want to be stronger, I want to be better. We can have prayers of the church that'll help us do that. So if you're subject to the Lord's invitation in any way this morning, won't you come forward now as we stand and as we sing.